Shalom to everybody. Good morning from Israel. Today we are going to continue with some insights onto the 7 universal Noahide Commandments and their correspondence to the divine attributes, the aspect in the human personality, and the capability of self-spiritual development. Today we are going to talk about the 4th commandment, which is the respect for family and refraining from adultery. We live in a strange time, a time when moral relativism appears to be ascending and moral absolutes descending. The culture in which we live has created a world with an unprecedented confusion of values, accelerated by social changes occurring at a pace that would have been unimaginable even a generation ago. This new vision of morality, which in reality mirrors much of ancient paganism, is often rationalized as a virtual, all-permissive, anything-goes social system founded on a concept of universal tolerance. Unfortunately, this concept of tolerance is in actuality simply a facade used to mask an agenda of sexual licentiousness. Starting in the 1960s, this brash new vision, masked as either civil rights, diversity, or tolerance, has inundated Western society with a barrage of propaganda and half-truths that are carefully designed to convince us, contrary to the weight of clinical evidence, that homosexuality, transgenderism, incest, bestiality, pedophilia, and many other sexual freedoms are simply alternative lifestyles that must be accepted as genetically predetermined and therefore entitled to the same degree and kind of protection as racial and religious diversity. However, such false messages run directly contrary to God's eternal truths, and indeed our own common sense. By tolerating a permissive sexual agenda, we ignore at our peril the warning of the prophet Isaiah, who said in chapter 5, verse 20, "Woe to those who speak of evil as good, and of good as evil, who make darkness into light and light into darkness. They make bitter into sweet and sweet into bitter." Let's try to understand our current situation. In our generation, there is definitely of loss of values and of priorities. There is a lack of understanding what are the references of the identification of a human behavior. People lack to find a model to identify with, and they identify with whatever they come in close encounter with, instead of identifying themselves to the divine image included within themselves. As we talked about in the beginning of the classes, we are trying to restore the divine image within every one of us. And the 4th commandment, the commandment to respect family unity and to refrain from sexual transgressions, specifically and more importantly, adultery, amongst the others. This commandment is in parallel of the divine attribute of chesed, loving kindness or generosity of God that expresses itself by the creation of the world, and not only the creation of the world at the beginning, but the creation of the world at every single second comes from this divine attribute of loving kindness, of generosity, which is expressed in the 4th commandment of the respect of family. This commandment and divine attribute is parallel to the human trait of personality of, in the same way, the capability of establishing a loving relationship. And this is actually the foundation of life. This is the foundation and the goal of the creation of the world. It's life, as we mentioned last class, with the commandment of respecting life, and as we mentioned also in the first class regarding the commandment of believing in God, which expressed himself in the belief of creation of something out of nothingness through pure goodness, through pure generosity of God towards us. So this corresponds to the capability in the human being of connecting to that state of consciousness of continual recreation of reality. This is how one brings something into life, is that continuous perpetual state of becoming that we also mentioned last class with the respect for life, and we mentioned, as I mentioned before, in the first class regarding the creation of reality on a constant basis. So let's look into the reality and the essence of what this commandment truly should mean to us and how it should be fulfilled in our consciousness and in our behavior. In the following way. The commandment to respect the family unity is a commandment that allows to build up a stabilized society. Where there are stabilized, harmonious relationships amongst the members of a family, between a husband and a wife, and their children, and their close family, and the relationship between them is clearly known to all of the members of the family, how the relationship should be lived, that the relationship between a husband and a wife, it's not the same that a husband between a father and his children, and it's not the same between a mother and her brother-in-law. So all the relationships in the midst of a family are to be regulated in a divine way. They should be at the image of the divine. This is on a social level, which allows us to stabilize societies. Imagine that inside of a family, people do not know exactly what is the frame of reference of a relationship. So a lot of times there are adultery happening inside of a family, and then the family falls apart, and the children are separated from their parents, and it's very hard for them when they grow to fix that separation within them. Separation is at the source of what we call evil in the world, or darkness, or the lack of understanding of the unity of God. This is the root of everything that has a negative aspect in the world, is separation. The sweetening of reality is the unification and the blending of godliness within our reality. So the respect for family unity and the relationships is at the heart of the fulfillment of the unity of God within the world. As we mentioned before, the relationship between a husband and a wife is the core of the life of a person, is the core of a society, is the core of human experience. God created the world and humanity because he wanted a relationship with us. He wanted to live that experience with every single human being. Every single human being is created in his image, and we see it in everyone's face. Everyone's face reflects the divine, and everyone's face is composed about 7 entrances or outputs: 2 holes of the ears, 2 holes for the eyes, 2 holes for the nose, and 1 hole for the mouth, which are a total of 7, which correspond to the 7 points in and points out of interface with reality, in with to express divinity within the world, or to take in a sensual experience and to elevate it, to include it within the divine unity. So therefore, this is really the commandment of respecting family unity is the heart of the human experience. One has to understand this clearly, that the human relationship is what brings us true happiness, is what brings to every one of us true fulfillment, when we are understood by our spouse, when we are understood by our friends, when we are understood by our children, when we make ourselves being understood by them, when the relation, we're here to give and to take, we're here to give and to take the opportunity to listen to others. We're here to express divinity within that unity, within that relationship. For those that know the Aron HaBrit, the Ark of the Covenant of the Jewish people with God, contains two angels, which one of the commentators says that they are faces of children on the top of the ark. And they are facing each other, but a little bit inclined at 45 degrees towards the ark. The two angels, in one of the commentaries of the Maharal de Prague, says that there's a husband and wife and how they relate to one each other. And they always have to have a third entity within them to glue them together, and that's God. God allows us to glue one to the next. He is the essence of the glue of the relationship. Without God, relationships cannot hold the test of time, cannot hold the test of challenge. God is the glue that brings us together. Everyone has his own personal experience, perception of reality. We will never be able to attain that perception of the other's experience of reality. So we need God to allow us self-nullification in order to be able to contain the other within us, like a Russian doll that contains ad infinitum the same doll, but in smaller levels within her. So we human beings, we are capable of containing within ourselves all the other human beings, if only we have that nullification in the presence of God. If our consciousness is permeated by the consciousness of God, so we are able to truly fulfill the commandment to respect family unity and to contain the other's experience within ourselves and to build up happy relationships, fulfilling relationships, relationships that motivate us to live on and further and bring out children. There are many people that tell me that, oh, nowadays, I think twice or even more, 10 times before having children. Why? Because look at the world. There's corruption, there's inversion of values. How can we bring children within this world with such confusion? So my answer is, having children is a commandment of God. And having children is the auto-actualization of oneself. Of course, it's only the beginning. Then comes the entire life of education, of living together. And this can be either a war between parents and children, because different generations, different perception of reality, or it can be a true joy. It can be a true blessing. Because those barriers can be abolished. Through what? Through godliness. Through studying the Torah of God in a permitted way. Through study. To bringing godliness into our lives, we will suddenly see the barriers disappear. We can understand each other. We can stop trying to impose ourselves to others, but to nurture what is the best within every one of us. In this epoch, in our generation, it's announced in the prophecies in the Tanakh, in the Jewish Bible, that the general attitude of humanity will go from an attitude of conquering, of imposing oneself, whether it's in an international level with wars, whether it's in a family level, like a father trying to impose his will amongst his family. But it will go from a masculine attitude to a feminine attitude. The attitude of the mother is not to impose herself to her children, is to see what's the best in her children and bring it out and develop it and allow the child to grab the best that is within them and bring it out and truly use that gift given by God to express divinity in the best way in the world and to refine his part of the world. So also we should try and focus on that aspect of our personality, to bring out what's the best within our family members, to listen to them, to focus on the positive, not so much searching all the critical aspects of the relationship and say, oh, here, you're hearing your spouse and just you're screening the words and the speech until you find something not good. So you say, now you can intervene. Now you can say something, how should it become better, etc. No, you should hear and screen and bring out the positive, bring out the good, and focus and develop it. As we mentioned before, in the commandment of respecting and honoring God through the power of speech, the power of speech allows us to emphasize goodness. When we emphasize, when we talk about something positive, something good, so it becomes emphasized. It takes more place. It becomes developed. Instead of speaking about negative things, we refrain. One of the ways to deal with anger is not to talk about it, not to express that anger at that time. Be silent. And when there are good things, bring them out. Develop them, describe them, give them life in order that they become our permanent reality. So that is the expression in the daily life of a Noahide, how to fulfill the commandment of respect of family unity, of course, according to Allah, according to the Noahide law, which is to refrain from the 6 prohibited types of relationships, and in a daily life, how to positively live that relationship with one's spouse, with one's children, and ultimately he creates those conditions that allow him to truly live what God expects from the beginning of creation, which is the eternal connection, and which is the capability of living a redeemed life. A redeemed life is lived through experience the continuous recreating of reality. We become one with God's unity by experiencing that the world is new every single second, that the world is a fresh creation, entirely new every single second. So I wish you all a good week, and Bezat Hashem, tomorrow, more or less at the same time, here on Facebook, we will continue with the 5th Universal Noahide Commandment and how to bring it into our daily life experience, Bezat Hashem. I seize the chance also because today is Sunday. The students of the Noahide Academy fulfilled already the course on the Universal Ethics, and today they are getting their certificates, Bezat Hashem. And this week, the course studied in the Noahide Academy is the course on expertise in monotheism, part 1. You can see all about it in the Noahide Academy website. I wish you all a good week, Shavua Tov, a fulfilled week, and we should all, by our practical deeds, in haste in the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, it should be speedily in our days.